Good evening. Sorry for the delay. My computer decided to restart at exactly the wrong time, but I don't think I'll be the first or the last person who is trying to stream and has that problem. Evening, Danny. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, mate. We got there eventually. We're going to do our best, aren't we, to get a slightly shorter pod than our usual, 2-hour fest. So we'll see how we go.
Well, that's it. I mean, like Danny's new fitness regime or health kick regime, we're going to be streamlined, fully focused, and surprisingly impressive. So, both of actually, to be Danny, I didn't tell you this. I've just started doing a little bit of weights in the evening as well.
Ooh.
I know you wouldn't believe it, would you? But not that many people watching this will have necessarily met me before, but I have the arms of an academic, should we say? Danny will know as a fellow sufferer in the higher education realms. Good. Okay, this evening we have packed. It's a tricky week, of course, because a lot of people are planning ahead for another week, you might say. So it's a funny one, but we are going to be looking at obviously at double game week assets. So Liverpool first, Everton following that. A few hot properties for the week. So if you're interested in swanning about with Justin Cliver and the rest, please do. We'll be talking about them a little bit as well. Some good questions from our followers on mainly Blue Sky. I think it's fair to say we're the official Blue Sky pod. I think it's fair to say as well. And we'll try and be out of here comfortably so that you can crack on with the last few episodes of Traitors. I don't think we have too much to say on that tonight, so we'll try and be good and brief and nice and kind and all that sort of stuff. Just before we do start, I've got a very strange smelling beer this week, and in solidarity with Danny's sort of alcohol-free days, I've got something called Mana Brea 00. So there we are. 90s men made good. How about that, Danny?
Yeah, I like it. I'm jealous. Yes, what Richie means by my fitness regime is actually just that I haven't had a haven't had a beer since not the Saturday just gone, but the Saturday before, which is pretty good for me. So feeling relatively fresh and getting a bit of a reset.
I mean, genuinely, it tastes okay, but it does smell like fish paste. It's a very peculiar one.
Yeah, I'm not sure I like the sound of
that. Anyway, new experiences for us all. We're going to crack straight in then to relatively for us professional-looking thumbnail this week, and a bit of a giveaway, to be fair, because I'm just going to tell you now, I've bought one of these in already. So place your bets. I suspect people who have watched us before can probably guess which one is more me. Yeah, we'll look at that later on. But one of those big guys is now in the Hammersmith Hardman for this week. So let's start, if you don't mind, Danny, with Liverpool. Quite interesting times, isn't it? Because they've already played this week. And for those people who were watching the Champions League game and trying to sort of pick up clues, some things have come through. We know a little bit about Jota and an injury recurrence. So that's quite interesting in itself. We know that, Alisson played midweek, but I don't think we can read anything into that. Trent got a full rest. Diaz did start, played, I think, about 74 minutes from memory. Cody Gakpo, full rest. And Salah played 90, but always does. Anyone I'm missing? I think you said McAllister, didn't you?
McAllister got a rest, I think. Did you say Konate? He got a rest because he's apparently been playing on painkillers for a while now. So obviously needs a rest, but good. Anyone who's going into double Liverpool defence wants Konate fit.
Yeah, and that is always the challenge. Just welcome to those who are slipping into the chats. Evening JH, feel free to drop your likes, subscribes, or even just a question for us this evening. We'll endeavour to look into that for you. But yeah, actually, I do have a few shout outs later. So Danny, at some point, remind me if I haven't done it. I will try and throw them in fairly early on. I know actually just before I'll do one now. And that's a good friend of mine, Sam Gamby, an ex-work colleague. You've just I was messaging earlier on. So Sam, good evening to you, sir. He's a Millwall fan though, so we probably shouldn't get on, should we really? Liverpool. So what do you like here then, Danny? What's your kind of lean? What's your process for choosing? Because I know that you've held like a proper man, like a really sort of hardcore firm-armed guy. You've had Trent from game week 1, and you've never relented despite the naysayers, and you've obviously had Salah for a long, long time as well. So what's your process? Because that might be quite helpful in choosing the third, if there is to be a third.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know if I have a process this time. This is worrying me a little bit. I hate double game weeks. I really do. Having to choose from the same teams and all this sort of stuff. What is my process? I mean, if first and foremost, my process, and I'm looking at minutes. Who's definitely going to get the minutes? I think Trent. There's no way I would be going into this game week without Trent. I think a lot of people still don't own him, which is fairly surprising. I guess. Well, of course, lots of people don't own him. It's like 40% EO or something, or 50% EO last game week. There's no way I'd be going in without Trent. He looks brilliant at the moment. I know he's had the odd bad game, and that sort of stands out in people's memory, and he was terrible at United. But basically, he's been superb in terms of his creativity, and just everything seems to be going through him at the moment. So he's just nailed on for me, and obviously Salah. And then it's just so tough. I mean, what's interesting about Liverpool suddenly, at least something is interesting in terms of, because obviously Jota got injured, which looks good generally for their forwards. But Darwin suddenly come back into play, hasn't he? And I don't think Diaz has impressed that much in that forward role, in that kind of as the kind of 9 or the false 9 or whatever you want to call it. His numbers haven't looked that good in the last few games. I think he hat-tricked on his first game, but then ever since then he's been a bit underwhelming. It's just not really looked quite right for him.
Yeah.
And so you can see Slot obviously exploring and wanting to, get more out of Darwin. And then Darwin has done that. He's actually looked really good the last couple of games. Obviously scored twice, but his pressing's been good, his decision-making and so on. And it's been better with him there than it has with Diaz there. And it's only been a couple of games, but that's really significant now because, that does influence minutes a bit, because Diaz is still a great player. I do think Gakpo is the one who's got the best minutes on paper as it stands right now. And that is a little bit worrying for me, who potentially is not going to have him in double game week.
Yeah.
But, obviously Darwin potentially pushes Diaz into what is probably his better position on the left. The only problem with that is he wasn't great yesterday on the left. But obviously I don't know how much you should really take from that, because, Liverpool just never had to get out of second gear in that game, and they've not really had to in many games recently. But before going into those sort of details, I think that is interesting. I think Darwin has gone right back up now in minutes, because he, to me, is looking like the one who's playing well in the number 9 position.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, so I'd like to think that does dent Gakpo's minutes in some way. I think Gakpo's going to start, especially after his rest yesterday. I think he's the first, to start. But if, in terms of process, I'm not really sure what to make of his minutes. But if I thought, people have said things like, if Gakpo, if your Liverpool forward gets 3 starts out of 4, that's all you want. That's not what I want. I want a player who gets 4 starts, and if that's for Everton, then fine. Or one of the defenders. But if I thought Gakpo was going to start the next 3 or 4 and get 60 to 65 minutes, I wouldn't get him. So I don't know. What do you reckon? I think Diaz does dent his minutes now, and Darwin.
Yeah. I think the first thing I would say is that from where we sit now, if you're choosing this week, and assuming that everyone is going to get Trent and Salah already has them, etc. I don't think you can confidently pick Diaz, for example, from this week. I think that makes quite an important point, isn't it? So if you've got a problem in your team, I don't know. Let's say you're in a situation where you have a dubious striker option. I sort of have one, to be fair. Or a goalkeeper, etc., or even a central defender. Defender. It's fairly easy to plug them in this week potentially if you're going down that avenue. I think the difficulty is if you are somebody who's interested in going this week, Diaz and obviously Darwin to some extent as well, or Jota, they are very difficult to make that decision this week. So you're losing some of your gain by not being able to pick this week. Now, it might be that you've got a different plan of some sort, and that's not a problem, or it might be that it is worth holding and thinking and waiting and that sort of thing. But we can't ignore that Ipswich have just shipped 6 goals. And most people, I think, would be quite keen to get in on the act now. So I think it is a difficult one, and that probably rules out Diaz for quite a few people. But that also conversely makes him quite an interesting risk for some people as well. So I get it. It certainly could happen. We know, we've seen him score braces with limited minutes and that sort of thing. But it's not broadly the way that we would play. I think it's fair to say neither of us. I think. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, just along those lines. I guess you're probably just going to go on to Gakpo then yourself. But that is where the interesting one comes in with Gakpo, because it's like it's very much it's very attractive to lots of people, and understandably so, because he's the one who looks like on paper you'd be very confident is going to start, this game against Ipswich home. And Ipswich is the sort of cherry, isn't it? You're thinking if you're going to get Liverpool attacker, obviously it makes a lot of sense to get them before Ipswich home. But it could be a bit of a trap, because you are giving up information. Not, trap's a strong word. It comes with connotations in the FPL community. But what I mean is, if you get anyone in the attack, you like you say, you're giving up that extra week's information, aren't you? Now, Gakpo's just had a rest last night and looks very likely to start next week, but we don't know what it's going to look like going into the double. We don't know what one more week's, fixture's going to look like in terms of how it changes things. So it could be quite nice, because loads of people are going to get Gakpo, and maybe that's a great decision for this week, but maybe it doesn't work out very well for the double. So that makes it really interesting. As you say, it's a bit more straightforward if you want to get a defender, and depends who you're replacing. Where possible, you just roll and you take the information rather than going this week if you can, if you've got a good fixture. A lot of people with Arsenal defenders and Arsenal keeper and stuff. That wasn't quite the case for me, so we'll talk about my team. But there are potential reasons for that, because I might have been priced out of moves. But no, it's Gakpo, isn't it? It's Gakpo for this.
Yeah, I think that's going to be. Actually, I've seen there are people, of course, who might be taking the opportunity to go Van Dijk this week, for example, something like that. I don't think it's necessarily a bad week for that either. But I think the difficulty there is that for a lot of people, it's probably going to be involving selling Gabriel, and of course, it's not especially an ideal week, you might say, for that. It's not terrible, but it's that is somewhat problematic. I mean, when it comes to it as well, and this is the thing, actually, he's just fresh off a 9-pointer. So actually, arguably, he's one of the stronger recent sort of form guys. But Alisson, far left on the image on the screen, of course, for a lot of people who have Arsenal double up, it is just easier, psychologically anyway, to let go of Raya than it is to let go of Gabriel, and let's be honest, we've had a pretty hard time of it since then. I remember being quite excited about Raya because we picked him up when there was a big risk that he was out. I think I might be wrong about. Do you know what I mean? There was a risk, and I remember thinking it was like a big personal moral victory that we managed to get Raya, even though he was a slight risk. And I felt pretty good about that at the time. But he's been pretty horrendous. I think I've only got, I don't know, on the occasions it was more than about 7 points is 1 or 2 tops, so it's very, very poor. Maybe not even that,
if at all. I don't think he has. No, I don't think he has. I think he's obviously the first 4 games. It was like the perfect trap with Raya, wasn't it? It was the first 4 games. Suddenly he got bonus and save points for the first time in his career. Yeah. I remember saying it at the time, because I can't remember which way around it was now. He got something like 4 bonus in the first 4 games, or something more than that. He had 4 or 6 for the whole of last season. But obviously people get carried away, and it is scary. And he did that through tough fixtures. And it was the perfect storm, because when we got him, as you say, first of all, it was like whatever it was, game week 6, game week 7 or game week 8, something. First of all, we didn't know any other keeper. No other keepers had really emerged yet. Because I hate buying, I don't really usually like going for the premium keepers. But no other keeper had really emerged yet. And Liverpool and Arsenal were just beginning an incredible run of fixtures, weren't they? That's why we were so happy that we did keep him for that first fixture where he was fit, because I remember like Praz, for example, went for Ederson because he didn't want to risk the minutes, but there wasn't anyone else available. That just shows it, because he went Ederson because he was the similar price, for 5 weeks, so that he could get back to Raya 4 or 5 weeks later. And what a disaster Raya has been. What an absolute disaster.
So there is a little bit of a convenient narrative that we could build there for those who are interested in Alisson. I know that Raya owners, because it's interesting. I think everyone that I have seen, very few people who have a 4-5, for example, are going to be making the jump to Alisson. So I think that it's almost exclusively the preserve of a Raya owner. To go to Alisson, it seems.
Yeah, it's true. I hadn't thought about that actually. It's true because Alisson, I mean, Raya's ownership was surprisingly low, wasn't it? Because I've just been sitting there for weeks, not sort of being able to justify selling him and just thinking, well, everyone got him in game week 6. And every week you look at like live FPL and it's like 20%, and you think, God, Raya's my differential, and then every week he lets you down. So yeah, it's a good point. I guess a lot of people can't go to Alisson.
It really is. On very few people considering it that don't have Evening Alex as well, who's just joined us as well. Do again drop a chat or reshare to everyone that you know would be my first favor to ask, Alex, if you're being kind this evening. But thank you very much. So I think okay. I'll read that in a bit. So with Alisson, I think what's quite interesting as well is that actually the fixtures lend themselves, you might say, relatively well, I think, in some ways, because the double, where everyone is a little bit concerned, we've seen what he could just do against an attack that does offer a fair amount of shots and good chances and that sort of thing. So 9 points against Brentford. And Bournemouth looked like they're on a decent hot streak as well. So I know some people would immediately say, oh, no, they'll definitely concede. The Derby, they'll definitely concede a fair few shots. So actually, it's not a terrible... there is some upside in it. I won't hear this kind of complete theory that it's just a 6 or a 2. I don't think it's quite as simple as that. So I think the fixtures in the double are pretty good from a shots or bonus perspective within the context of a goalkeeper. And then you got 2 home games against decent teams. But for me, the biggest argument for Alisson is that it gives you the flexibility down the line you get a few more decent fixtures before 29. And of course, if you've got Fabianski, in theory, you've got 29 covered. But also, if you don't decide to hit the wild card in 30, you've also got Liverpool defence in some way. You've got them covered. Because I know that some of us are likely to sell Trent Alexander-Arnold maybe in that period. The sort of 29 might be an easy way to free up a million or two to put into another spot. If you're doing a few transfers to cover off 29 if you're not using a free hit. So I think that's another one of the reasons why I am quite warm to the Alisson in whilst others don't. I also don't really like Konate. No, I don't really like that pick at all. It just worries me. Just immediately I feel like there could easily be something in the middle of that game week that goes wrong. And I just don't like it. And I've also got lots of defenders at the moment, when we come to it later, I've got Milenkovic, who plays 29 anyway. Hall, he's one of those players I never really want to get rid of. I might have to, I don't know. Munoz, Gabriel, none of them are eminently saleable. Of course, we might have to. But Raya is just an easier sell from that point of view. So factoring all those things, I think it's better than people think. I might be constructing a narrative for myself. But what do you think? Are you warm to the
I totally agree, and I've gone through all these points in my head as well. And sometimes I can spend the whole night thinking it in that way, and I'm thinking it's a very robust pick, and that's on paper. It's a very robust pick. That's what I like. You're thinking 90 minutes through every game, as you said, and I know you mentioned 29. I don't know if you said the same thing already, but obviously it actually means one fewer transfer, theoretically, of a player you might have to transfer out. If you're not free hitting in 29, if you've got Fabianski as well, you can obviously just play Fabianski rather than having to sell another Liverpool player. Because again, if, as you've mentioned, if all the favourites win the cup games and you've got, Newcastle blank, Palace blank, Liverpool blank, loads of people have got loads of players from those teams already. So it's a lot of transfers. Trent is one that a lot of people won't lose a lot of money on, like you say. So yeah, it's potentially saving a transfer having Alisson as well. Like you say, I'm the same with Konate. It's kind of a double-edged sword because Konate being fit is really important to the defence in general, really important. They just don't have anyone else, and he's really good and aggressive and so on. So if he is injured, it's not going to be good for Alisson. But as you say, I'm the same. It doesn't feel robust enough with Konate, which is similar to the attackers. And it's just going to be. It just could be such a swingy double game week because. Again, like you say, they're two tough fixtures. They are, so they could easily concede in both. But also, therefore, you kind of expect them to be low-scoring games, and you expect Liverpool to approach the game knowing, they've already had the message and the signal from Bournemouth, having just beaten Newcastle 4-1 away. Was it 4-1? It's an incredible result. So they've got the message. They know what team's turning up or what where they're going to in Bournemouth. So, and like you say, like Brentford at home. And fair enough, Brentford might have been a bit tired, but Brentford on their own pitch, I think Liverpool conceded 0.776 xG in that game, so less than 1 xG away at Brentford, who have been playing really well. That's just like Jesus. This, like you say, this team, and that's with Konate back, they can clean against anyone. So you could easily see 2 cleans in the double. You could easily see them concede in both. You would expect them to be low-scoring games. You're worried about attackers. There's fewer goals, but if a Gakpo gets the winner in both, it's probably a lot of bonus in both. But Liverpool as well. They seem to a few weeks ago they were scoring 5-0, 6-3 with Spurs, whatever it was, and suddenly, maybe this is deliberate. I don't know. On these things, but suddenly they seem to just be very controlled again, and like second or third game. Last night was just so professional. They played against a team who haven't. Lille, I know it's the French league, whatever, but they hadn't lost in 21 games. And Liverpool genuinely never got out of second gear. So suddenly you're winning games like that, and you're not conceding against Brentford. So suddenly it all looks pretty controlled. And so, again, I'm kind of talking myself into it. Alisson feels pretty solid, but I'm still scared about the attackers. I'm scared of... It's not very exciting, is it?
No, I think it's fair to say, by the way, I will do something quite unusual for the FPL Last Resort pod. I'm going to refer to some stats in a minute. Everyone is so proud. I can just hear it now.
Do it.
I know.
You're on it.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to bloody do it in just a minute. But one thing, there is a magic ingredient for me. I don't know whether this is affecting any of your decisions as well, but I am very, very keen to get Beardy Bryan back into my team. And to be honest with you, Gakpo would he block that? I think he probably would block that for me one way or another through funds. So I'm really keen to turn Sarr into Mbeumo this week or next. I haven't decided yet, but that is a little bit of a factor as well, because I do think that the next few games for Bryan are great. So that's another little factor as well. I know that we don't talk about everything's team dependent or all the rest of it, but that is a factor. So just very quickly on the stats. So last 6 non-penalty XGI. Salah is way out in front, 7.6. Szoboszlai is second, which I thought was interesting. 3.57. It was mostly in one game. I'm pretty sure about that. He did rack up 3 assists or something like that. But nevertheless, Gakpo is behind Szoboszlai, only just in front of McAllister, and a little in front of Diaz. And Trent isn't far behind, actually. So Trent's on 2.69 and Gakpo's on 3.29. So it just underlines that Trent really is a non-negotiable, I think, unless you are, a sucker for punishment, really. I mean, actually, this is... I saw this question from someone in a different thread the other day. Who would you captain if Salah got injured?
Yeah, I saw Flappy ask that as well. And I suddenly thought, oh, shit. Actually, no, he was asking about... you mean the double, or do you mean this week? Because there are 2 questions.
Oh, yeah. No, I do mean the double. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so the double, because obviously it's triple captain. Can you imagine? The people who've already used the triple captain would be arms in the air, celebrating, tears of joy, because there's not many other places to go, and then you're absolutely screwed for your whole season plan. So when I saw that, I thought, shit, what if Salah is injured? So I don't know. I haven't thought about it. But I'd want to use it that way. I might. You can't really go Trent, can you? You can't go Trent with 2 tough away games.
Would you? What do you mean? The defense is rock solid.
I mean, you could.
No, really... I don't know. I don't think you would though.
No.
Not if you knew in advance.
No. Oh God, that is.
There'll be someone out there who triple captains the other Liverpool attackers in that
DCL.
scenario, but
DCL is a possibility.
yeah, well, he's yeah, we'll come to him in just a few minutes' time. But some positive signs. So anyway, just very quickly, actually, on the what I've got the stats in my mind. But so last 6 as a team, Liverpool XGI 18.9, 19 of which was realised. So it's basically on the money. And the expected goals conceded of 4.06. So that just underlines that last 6 XG of I can't actually say it, but of just over 4. They have conceded 7, by the way, so they are kind of actually underdoing things in that respect. But I mean that has to be taken pretty seriously. They, getting 4 and 6, and not all of them were straightforward games, of course. So it's pretty impressive, and that was without a few players here and there as well. So I think that's pretty good. We'll come to Everton's in just a second, but I think that is quite interesting. But for now, you are leaning on the kind of robust, let other people worry about the attackers. And, well, actually, you will worry about the attackers, but in terms of picking.
Yeah. Sorry, you distracted me there thinking about those stats. I feel better. I feel a little bit better already now about Alisson. I mean, obviously, I knew their defence is good.
That's what I'm here for, Danny.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Obviously, the defence is brilliant, but yeah, it's all about the minutes. But I'm always all about the minutes, and sometimes that can be costly. Don't get me wrong. I do like a risk, do like a gamble, like someone who's a bit fun. There's something inside me burning deep inside me that doesn't feel entirely comfortable about the fact that I'm going in with a keeper and a defender and probably an Everton defender and Everton attacker and stuff, and everyone's getting Gakpo for this week or someone like that. But it is what it is. I'm sort of quietly confident, a bit like you.
Yeah.
I think
we have said this very briefly as well, but when other people are are only on to Liverpool are against, what is it, Southampton? No, I'm trying to remember the fixture just before. Actually, I can just skip forward to it now very quickly. But they have, who is it? Yeah, Liverpool, Southampton, 28, for example. I know it's not the most exciting thing to say in the world, but you will at least have 3 Liverpool. Again, Everton on the other side of 29, should you decide to wait. There's a few things there as well. So few benefits to that approach as well. Let's go to the only man who's possibly better dressed than you. I don't know, actually. We could, it's not, well, it's a debate for another time, but handsome Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I think we were both reasonably impressed with what we saw the other day. I know it's, dare I say it was only Spurs, but it's okay. Sorry, everybody. But it's a very impressive finish. Tidy footwork. The manager quotes have been quite good as well. I've seen a few quotes. David Moyes said something along the lines of, he is the centre forward that we need. So things like that. Maybe that was paraphrased or what have you, but pretty impressive. I won't go so heavy into my uncomfortable area of stats, because I'm just going to tell you now, the last 6 are A, irrelevant, and B, not very good. But we can come to those in a bit. But Dominic Calvert-Lewin is at the top of the tree anyway for Everton attackers, if anyone is wondering. He markedly less than a couple of Liverpool defenders, but nevertheless. But yeah, so I'll come to you what you think of those in just a second, Danny. Welcome to a few other people that have just joined us. So Max, CM Punk, Sam Trafford, and FPL FOMO. You are very welcome here this early eve. Danny, what do you think? Were you impressed with what you saw?
Yeah, I mean, more so than just what I saw. I think it's just, again, sometimes I just try to step back and not think too deeply about exactly what I saw. I mean, I saw what I kind of expected to see, other than very happy with the finishes. I mean, Calvert-Lewin's a player who's always been great at getting chances, but it's all just seems to be, again, creating a kind of story in your head in terms of how I feel about it. But this is how I'm going to approach it, and then it all seems to be coming together a little bit, doesn't it? Because we've already got a guy who's has always been brilliant at getting chances, which is the hardest thing in football. And obviously he's on penalties. But the new manager's come along, getting all these sort of positive quotes. You see that quote from Njai, who sort of said, which is a bit harsh on Dyke. Whenever someone always says this, but I didn't really expect it out of the Everton camp but he sort of, and Jai said basically like we're all much happier now. We all know what we're doing. We all actually know what we're doing now.
Cold.
I know, and I mean he's another one that it could all be coming together for him as well because he's a brilliant player, and I'd definitely be looking at him if it wasn't for DCL. But yeah, I mean, you suddenly coming together. Suddenly they've won a really good game to win. They've scored 3 goals. Calvert-Lewin scored the first goal. It was a great goal. That's going to massively help his confidence because he's obviously been lacking a lot in confidence recently. The manager's probably, making him known, making him feel like the man. He's getting 90 minutes, and I expect that to carry on. Moyes is that type of guy. If somebody's his main man, he kind of demonstrates that and shows it, and just sort of lets them know on the pitch that they don't come off, which is massive because I guess you've got Beto there, and if Calvert-Lewin carried on playing badly or he wasn't scoring, then maybe someone like Beto would come in because he's a big oaf of a player, and Moyes probably likes. But yeah, like it feels like you just get on that wave. I'm not saying no to that in a double game week coming up. There's absolutely no chance. I mean, he's one of the most nailed players in my team. I know that sounds silly, and I was a bit hesitant first, but it does move quickly like that. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. We've been talking about minutes and robustness and things like that, and whether we think Gakpo's going to play or Diaz. Well, with Dominic Calvert-Lewin, you've got 180 minutes of number 9 on penalties. And then one of the games is at home to Leicester, and one of them's a derby. Yeah, Liverpool's not a good game, but you've got Leicester and a derby. But you've got 180 minutes of penalties. And then you've got a guy who's suddenly happier. He's got a manager who's, who he probably likes more. It looks like he does. The team look like they like it more, they enjoy it more. And I don't know, you just think that the style fits DCL. He's so good in the air as well. That's one of the things that he doesn't, when he gets chances on his head, he's usually better with those. He probably has to think less, and it's just about, getting in the right area. But Moyes is all about getting balls in the box, and getting it out wide, getting his fullbacks wide. So, yeah, I mean, it's gone on a bit of a DCL rant there, but he's just absolutely nailed for me.
Yeah. And it's interesting, I think obviously there's going to be quite a few people out there who are still fresh from the burns of the last time that they went there. But of course, it's quite a different context now, it has to be said. I think what's interesting, by the way, is that I don't know whether any other managers watching have this problem, but I started to do the dangerous thing of forward planning and doing a bit of a tinker. And Dominic Calvert-Lewin is more or less quintessential to any of my kind of man-made solves over the next few weeks, because the problem is, so for anyone out there, and I was going to ask you the question in a minute of, does it matter who you have in your team in terms of selling them for someone like a Calvert-Lewin or an Engine? Because in my case, so I'm fresh off of 2 blanks from Raul Jimenez against West Ham and Leicester, in which he should have got something in both games, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah,
but quite frustrating. Obviously I can make up the issues if I really want to in terms of minutes and the rest of it. But Calvert-Lewin does fit quite nicely for a manager with that kind of position. Whereas I can imagine for some, actually for you, it's quite an interesting one because you've got a good, a little bit more robust. I know João Pedro is not taking many open play shots and the rest of it, but is that who you would move on?
Yeah, well, this is the thing, isn't it? It's all about Chris Wood, Obviously, selling Chris Wood is going to be selling João Pedro over Wood is going to be the suboptimal move, for any models, I would imagine, who've not favoured Wood all season. And, fine, I'm not saying that that's completely wrong or anything. His and Forest's aren't about the numbers, really, are they? And they haven't been. So is it pure luck? Is it other stuff? I don't think it's pure luck because obviously Chris Wood's a legend, but it does pose some interesting ones for me because I'm likely to. I mean, this is the thing, like with Wood previously. So because it dictates moves so much. I mean, first of all, even going back to Gakpo, you said that it would have ruled out Mbeumo for you, and that's why it was even more difficult for me because I think my team value, although I own Enzo, which has been a pain in the ass, my team value has been very high this season, and I could have got Gakpo for Wood. And had basically a really solid team and still been able to get Mbeumo from Eze, still been able to get Alisson, still been able to get Everton defender, just about. Would have made maybe some other future moves, but I think that sort of makes you think, oh, I can afford it and other people can't. And it makes you sort of think that you should go to Gakpo even more. But anyway, I'm not doing that. And yeah, I mean, it's very close between Pedro and Wood because obviously, João Pedro, first of all, Danny Welbeck's back and Brighton they've just beaten, as soon as Danny Welbeck's back, they beat United 3-1. They look a different team. Pedro gets to be in his better position. Pedro is a brilliant pick. It's just that is he better than Wood at the moment? Again, models might say so, but for me, no. But then suddenly there's pressure on Wood then because owning Wood has been a joy, hasn't it, for so long? I mean, it's become less and less of a joy because his ownership's gone up and up and up, and it's like, what was it, 80% or something last week? So it sort of just felt like a bonus every week. But still, a lot of good managers don't own him. But now, if I keep Wood, which is as I plan to, and still bring in someone like Calvert-Lewin, loads of people are going to sell Wood, especially loads of top managers and anyone who's using review for other moves and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They've got Wood, he's gone, because he has got kind of 3 relatively tough fixtures. So suddenly, I'm now like, I need Wood now to do something. And it's not so much a fun bonus anymore. I'm like, if Wood, in 24, have you seen it's the first game of the week? Chris Wood is the early kickoff at 12:30 with a single game week. So suddenly, Chris Wood blanks in that. Suddenly, you're going into game week 24 double, basically with 10 players, and it's not as fun anymore. But I know we've sort of overlapped the conversation here in terms of who you're selling, but I also don't think those fixtures for Wood are like, obviously they're tough fixtures. Bournemouth are a great team, but I don't think they're that bad for a team like Forest. Getting to play. You feel like Forest can probably bully Bournemouth a bit and bully Fulham a bit and get in behind, and the sort of small pitches, not necessarily like the biggest teams.
Yeah, and of course he'll have Mateus Cunha supplying him soon. So
yeah, can you imagine?
No.
It's not
probably, but you never know.
I feel like no, I'm not going to say it, actually. I'm not going to say that. It's okay. I don't want to offend any Forest fans. Forest are a big club, brilliant club.
Frenchie, don't our friend Frenchie?
Forest are a massive club, but I just feel like Cunha, as amazing as he is, it has gone to his head a little bit, and I can imagine him just being like wanting Champions League straight away and thinking he wants to go to a really big club straight away. I don't know.
It's interesting because actually CM Punk mentions in the chat that Pedro was dropping deep into central midfield against United. Easy move to DCL or Wissa in 24. I mean, just very quickly on Wissa, because obviously Wissa was also linked to Nottingham Forest earlier this week. And for those of viewing the pod who don't know, I actually live around the corner from Brentford's ground. And I was just saying, why would he leave? He's got Kew Gardens around the corner, lovely. Why on earth would he leave West London, go to Nottingham? So sorry to offend anyone. It's probably lovely there, I'm sure it is. I did go there once a long time ago, so yeah, I have been. Yeah, so it is quite interesting. I think the reason I raise it is because there will be people out there. I'm trying to think what kind of players they would have to drop, but would be one example. Pedro would be another. So there is that kind of factoring in, and there's also missing Wissa for some people. That might be a little bit of a play on their mind as well. So few things to consider. I'm going to ask you one more question, Everton related, actually, just before we move, because I know that you're relatively keen on getting at least one other in defence in as well, possibly just to save money. I don't know. We'll have that conversation in a bit, but I mean, what's your lean here? If you're someone with fewer, who's not as good at planning as you, basically, if you had to pick one, are you more inclined by defense or attack, or do you think they're fairly even?
Well, I mean, as I've said, I'd be prioritizing DCL, and I think. Oh God, what would I do if I didn't have many transfers? I mean, obviously these things can be a trap. I need to decide how many of my transfers I'm going to spend. I might even end up getting double Everton defense. It's an option. There's a reason for that. It's because I've just
greedy.
I've got a good feeling about Tarkowski.
Yeah, I wondered if you'd say that. Yeah, okay, yeah, I can see that. Yeah,
and I don't like it. If they were the same price, I'd get him easily. But you do that cash. I mean, Mikalenko is still 4.3. I need to keep an eye on that actually in case he's going to rise or anything like that. But 4.3 is incredible price.
Yeah. Do you know what? Actually, he turns up a little bit higher on the charts for Everton than I was expecting. For I
Well,
don't know. He must have had
this is
one
it.
good week or something.
So he was one who, again, I didn't get to see the game closely with Everton Spurs, but I saw bits of it, and I know that a lot of fans and a lot of people said that he stood out, and he was almost his audition, if you like, and he did play very well. In the highlights, he played very well. He got a few shots off, and he got forward. He was right up and down as Moyes wants from his fullbacks. And obviously, you think about Moyes' days of it was Moyes' days, wasn't it, with like Coleman and Baines and all that, in the earlier days. So he just looks a great pick. But obviously, you can tell Tarkowski is getting in the box and he's aggressively attacking headers, as he's obviously been instructed to. You can tell Moyes has just had a little word with him, been like, Tark, you're a big, hard bastard. Get yourself in the box and beat people up and get your head on it. And he loves a bit of that, Moyes. And you can see that Tarkowski's trying to do it now. So I've got a bit of a decision to make there. Obviously, if I was just getting one, I would get Mikalenko because he's 4.3. I think. What do you think? I mean, in terms of, let's assume you've got Trent, and let's assume that you're going to go DCL or a Liverpool attacker or whatever. If you're only going to get one, I think you'd probably prioritize one of the keepers, wouldn't you? If you were just getting one in defence.
Yeah, I would. Yeah. Well, unless you've somehow got a ton of cash for Van Dijk. Yeah.
I mean, like you said though as well, quite a significant thing with the Everton defenders, although it's relatively far away, is a lot of the defenders that we have blank in 29, and Everton don't. And not only do they not blank, but is it West Ham at home, best fixture of the season in 29?
How dare you, sir?
No, it's actually not.
Throw down my gloves and get out the dueling pistols for an underhand comment like that. But yeah, it's probably not. Well, it's not bad, is it? I mean, let's be honest. Moyes is going to be well up for that. I mean, it's a little way off. I just had a quick check, by the way. The last two, Tarkowski's managed. What is it? He's got 0.6 expected goals. Actually, it was in 2 games. Very impressive.
Well, he got it all in the last game, actually. I think.
Did he?
Yeah, he had a big chance in the last game, but it seemed to be spread out. I did glance at the stats briefly for the last game, and just it wasn't. I don't think it was one chance because it was. Yeah, no, it wasn't actually. So last game he had 0.56 expected goal involvement, but he had 0.37 expected assists and 0.19 expected goals. I do remember that diving header, so I presume that was his chance. And I guess. Oh, actually, yeah, because he set up the goal as well, didn't he? So he had the diving header chance, thinking about it. It was a very good chance. And then he set up the own goal. So there was significant Tarkowski threat in the last match. Yeah, I had Tarkowski stuff last season. I remember with the bloody double gaming as well. Do you remember? And he got a 15-pointer when I called it the game before. And I think Do
you know, irrelevant stat of the week? I'm very stats this week, Danny. Is that because I remember this from looking at it before, and I was surprised. How tall do you think James Tarkowski is?
Well, it's funny you say that because
damn, don't you?
No, I don't know. But I remember thinking about it the other day. There was a camera angle where he was going into the box, and I didn't think he was all that big. And I might be wrong here, so it might have just been the camera angle. But he was like an absolute monster. It's because he's so broad in the shoulders. It looked to me like he was a lot taller than I thought. Is he? Or is he shorter than I thought?
Well, put it this way. Okay, so the height difference between him and Jared Branthwaite is 11 centimeters.
Right.
Does that interest you?
Yeah. Which way? Because I can't think how tall Branthwaite is now.
So Branthwaite is 1.96, right?
So he's taller.
And Tarkowski is 1.85, which is it's my height actually.
Right. Okay.
But it's not massive. It's not kind of He's got
this throwback build. He's probably the strongest man on the pitch. He's probably the strongest man on the pitch on any pitch. Even if Traore is on there, it wouldn't surprise me if he's stronger than Traore.
You know, when you see old movies from the 1950s or something, and there's a strong guy, but he doesn't go to the gym, but he's strong in a real way, a construction worker strong. Tarkowski is construction worker strong, whereas he's not a gym guy. So
yeah, that's what I mean by
that's
what I mean by throwback. We've all got those friends. I've got one friend I can think of who's just never been to a gym in his life, but he's got the strength of a titanium grizzly bear. And yeah, James Tarkowski is one of those guys.
There we are. This feels like a good time to say smash likes and subscribes. I can never bloody say it, can I? But if you like content about when people used to be strong in a real way, not a gym way, then we're here for you. Good. Okay, so Target, it's going to be very difficult for people to justify that move, which makes it quite an exciting one. Because I mean, for me anyway, that one of the reasons why I don't mind Mykolenko is it obviously saves 500,000. And well, not 500,000, but it comes in very handy. It means I can, if I wanted to, I could bump up a third striker spot to Wissa. I could turn Enzo into something useful, which I know that is probably on your mind as well at some point. Is how, in case he keeps dropping and dropping and dropping.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. That's the crucial thing for me. And the difference between Mykolenko and Tarkowski is exactly that. It's who you can get for Enzo, which is a conversation because obviously I'm sure everyone wants to talk about. But obviously we've got Kluivert and Semenyo, but we've also got Dango Unchained at only 5.0.
Dango Unchained. That's from. Well, who talked about it this week? I've heard this. I've heard it.
People have been saying it for weeks. As soon as Baker texted me about 3 weeks ago, it was FML. But as soon as the name came up, I think it was me and Baker. We were like, "Oh my god, yeah, he's
Django Unchained." Yeah, that was maybe the last Tarantino film I didn't mind actually. Anyway, another conversation for another time. There's actually quite a lot of anti-Everton feel in the chat.
Good.
Bugler, sorry. I'm not going near any Everton. Good for you, sir. You're quite right. We are foolish. Well, more so Danny. I think it's Danny more. And FPL FOMO probably know Everton, so that's quite exciting. Should we come back here to see us wince later on? And Com also asks, has anyone seen a titanium grizzly bear? Not yet, Com, but we've still got plenty of time to see that titanium grizzly bear. Actually, the other day I almost put on is it Cocaine Bear? There's that film. Oh, I've got to watch it somewhere. It's so me. I used to love
it a true story. I think it's a true story.
Yeah,
it's based on a true story. I think.
Okay. Yeah. Got to get around to that. I mean, it has to be at least reasonably good, right? A grizzly bear eating a bag of cocaine. That sounds pretty good.
Sounds like James Tarkowski on a Saturday afternoon to me. But yeah,
it does. The man is made of steel. Anyway, actually, talking of Kluivert, I assume is the man that you wanted to talk about, and Django Unchained as well. He's 5 million, isn't he? Whereas Kluivert's just gone up to 5.6, isn't he? Oh, thank God for these horrible fixtures, actually. Otherwise, his price would be ridiculous. Also, it might arrest the rise of Ahmad a little bit as well, because I don't know about you, he would still be in and around the conversation if we were upgrading Enzo.
Yeah, true.
So it's quite good that he's stepped in to make it complicated for people. So yeah, first of all, do you think would you advise that people think twice about loading up too heavily on double game weekers for 24 and take some thought to see whether Kluivert or Brentford, etc., are worth spending your time in your transfers? What do you think? I mean, as a man who's got about 27 transfers, this is probably easy for you.
I had 4 and I've got 3 left. Let's put it that way.
My heart bleeds. Yeah,
I haven't actually made it to 5. I've had 4 a couple of times. I haven't actually made it to 5 yet.
I've seen a few 5s this week. I think I know. Is it Andy? Let's talk FPL. Andy's got 4 or 5, isn't he?
Has he?
Yeah. I'm sure he has it when he's not been doing his sort of walkabout Galway videos, which are quite exciting. But yeah, I mean, we need to do content like that, Danny. Walking around, I could do a walk around Kew Gardens and film.
Exactly, that's what I was going to say. Yeah.
But yeah, what do you think? Should we be focusing on these players?
Yeah, I mean, always make moves that also make sense in the long term is obviously the key.
Yeah.
You talked about a player like Mikalenko. It just makes a lot of sense long term because it can help a lot of people restructure the squad. A lot of people have kind of had a squad a certain way for a long time, have built up defenders here and there, and price points all over the place. It's really nice with Mikalenko to just bring in someone who's 4.3, who's almost a sort of 15th in terms of your price structure, but actually they've got a double game week and they play in 29. So obviously, it's got to make sense long term. I mean, Mbeumo is someone I'm going to be bringing in. Like, my question for me is just whether it's going to be this week or next week. And it's been a horrible, painful, torturous few weeks without him, to be honest, where I've felt lonely and ashamed, and just generally lower mood. I've talked to my family less. And basically, Bryan needs to come back. And that day when he got that 19 point, I was sitting in the pub with my dad. I was having a nice Saturday pint with my dad, and it was lovely. We sat on this little cove in a proper English pub, with like a log burning fire and pint down on the table. And then goal alerts go off, and it's like Brentford goal, and you just think, just don't say it's Mbeumo. Like, I just want to enjoy this pint. Mbeumo goal. Then it's a Brentford penalty, and then it's an assist, and you think it won't be Mbeumo got this anyway. Horrible. So he's coming back. That ruined the day. He's coming back for me. It's just whether it's going to be this week or next. And it's a great fixture. So don't get too carried away. That's short and simple for me. I'm sure you want to talk about Wissa, but the interesting thing is the Bournemouth midfielders, because they're so different. I don't know. Like, I still don't know enough about any of them really. I suppose I know most about Semenyo. But again, what I want really primarily is minutes. So, but you also do want other stuff, and obviously they've all got their own appeals. So you've got the biggest thing now is Kluivert's changed everything up so much because he's just got a 90. It's not about the hat trick, which was an amazing hat trick, and obviously it suggests that he's a really good finisher. And it's just that he's only done it once, and I don't know what this is. I don't know if it was a one-off. I don't know if it's confidence or form and whatnot. I've seen like Bournemouth reporters say things like, well, he's, again, beware of fans. I think it was a Bournemouth reporter or a Bournemouth fan, and he's like, well, yeah, he's definitely going to get 90 because we've got no one else. Well, no, I'm not listening to that. I'm disregarding that.
No.
Yeah, I appreciate that you're short on players, but I don't know anything about Kluivert as a person, his fitness, why his minutes haven't been that consistent, other than obviously the injuries I understand. So the good thing with Bournemouth is that, for me, I get another couple of weeks to see that. If Kluivert gets another couple of 90s and looks great, then he looks easy because he's on penalties. But at the moment, we don't know about his minutes. You've got Semenyo, whose minutes are the best, and he's the best player, he's the best footballer. But he's so frustrating, Semenyo, isn't it? Because he gets so many chances. He doesn't seem to finish. It feels like you're relying on that brilliant finish, that brilliant goal. Like the one against Chelsea, that was a ridiculous goal against Chelsea. That was an incredible goal from way less than half a chance that he absolutely buried. And then there's Django, who his minutes look really good, but I don't really know what he's doing. I don't know if he's going to play the number 9 position. I don't know if he's dropping back a bit. He looked good against Newcastle. He had a goal disallowed. His minutes have been really good the last few weeks. So his minutes so Kluivert's minutes are the worst of the 3. Django's some kind of middleman who could be incredible. He's getting into good positions. I'm going to carry on talking now while Rich gets his stats table up, because he's been so great with the stats this week and tells me.
No, I wouldn't get that far. No, actually, do you know what? Sorry, I'm not going to cut you off, am I? Maybe
I'm done.
Actually, what's quite interesting about this time is, as everyone probably knows by now, Evan Nilsson and I can never remember his name. Unal, is that his name?
Yeah, Unal.
Unal. Both injured at the moment, I think, for the foreseeable as well. And of course, when it comes round to making room for their nice run after Liverpool at home, where it starts with Southampton, Wolves, and so on, and of course, it's good for 29. By that time, it will be the 14th of February. Now, that will be long after the transfer window is closed. So I think that helps us a little bit. I know some people are pretty keen to get in on the action now, probably catch a rise or two, and that's fine. But for me, I'm given the fixtures anyway and the other priorities, I think it's quite handy that there is a gap of around a couple of weeks where we can judge the situation. Because it wouldn't surprise you, would it, if they brought in a striker during this time period? Maybe they won't, but that should give us a little bit of a watching brief. I think This week's probably slightly more useful for watching them than it will be next week, because obviously Liverpool. But yeah, to be able to watch. But at the moment, as I understand it, Django is. Oh, here, actually, CM Punk's been very handy in the chat. He knows more than I do, to be fair. So he's planning on having all three on the screen by 24. I mean, again, you've stacked up your transfers well. Average position-wise, Clivert was getting ahead of Django, even as the 10. That plus penalties is making me lean towards him. So he seems the favourite for people at the moment. I know what you mean about Semenyo. He's still really he's the best of the three. In playing terms, he's drifting fairly wide, isn't he? A little bit more. His chances are quite low value at times. That's one of the challenging things as well. But we have some disagreement in the chat. Actually, Semenyo is better for me, bigger threat. Even if both minutes are expected minutes are 90, so he creates space and opportunities for others. That's from Joseph in the chat as well. So Bilic, are you, any relation to the big Slav? Hopefully, that would be very exciting for me anyway as a West Ham fan. I keep knocking the table tonight. Sorry. Too excited, but for me anyway. I don't know about you, Danny. The decision at the moment is just when to get Bryan. Bournemouth, I'm okay with waiting, but I wouldn't put anyone off of if they got lots of spare transfers, sorting that out now, and if they feel confident. But for me, it's a wait. I'm also pretty keen. Actually, there's a little bit of me. I might, small chance that I don't bother with a defender move in 24 and actually get okay, I can't say his name. Huyson.
Oh, okay.
There's a reason for this. It potentially saves me some points down the line in terms of.
I like it. I like anything that's so sacrificing a double game week for a robust long-term move has to be admired.
Yeah. Well, you know, if I'm going to be a bit sexy and a bit James Bond about it, it's going to be for a big centre back. so that is the way that I roll. Yes, I apologise to Josip in the chat for thinking that there was only one Bilic. I take it all back. But I did enjoy that season. He was in charge of West Ham. It was very exciting. That I know that was the Payet and Lanzini year. Oh, lovely. Loved that year. Didn't really lead to any great long-lasting success, but it was good to watch. We're going to talk a little bit about fixtures and relevant fixtures going forward. What do you fancy, Danny? Would you like to look at this week more exclusively, or do you want to think more in terms of the planning?
I don't know. We might end up flipping between, really, mightn't we? I don't know, because I guess we're thinking about, well, we might flip that when we think about our teams and what transfers we're thinking about making, because it is again, I know a topic, just thinking ahead, like one of the topics of, certainly for me and probably for a lot of people, is if you're selling defenders, who are you going to sell? I mean, I've got Hall. I know, it's terrible. I've got Hall, Munoz and Robinson, and you really can't tell the fixtures apart.
It's a nightmare,
even with rotations. And I'm like,
I have the same problem plus Milenkovic, and it's a nightmare because, of course, Milenkovic. I mean, logically, you don't sell him because he's got 29, right? And you should be able to hide him. But in actual fact, he's sort of the easiest to sell because Hall, I kind of feel like he's well, from what I gather from chip strategies going forward, Hall kind of feels like you're going to want him pretty much in any strategy at some point or another. Well, I don't know. Maybe I've misheard everything I've looked at, but he seems like a fairly secure one in that regard. It's fine, of course. You can buy him back. You can lose a little bit of money. We're going to lose money on someone, right? But Milenkovic is probably the one where I lose the least, and he's got duff-ish fixtures for the next few. So it's sort of tempting to leave him for a bit and then come back to it. Whereas, again, Munoz is a tricky one because easy to sell from the point of view of probably no 29, but he's probably the best fixtures up until that point. So very tricky. I think I'm going to make an executive decision here, Danny, and mostly look at the kind of relevant fixtures. But just from this screen, let's just pick out a couple of quite important ones for our decision making. No particular order, but I think actually we've talked enough about Liverpool. I think we've probably talked enough about one or two others there as well. But I'd quite like to focus on. Let's just do a couple from the Saturday. Bournemouth Forest, I think, is an interesting one to kind of judge, because there are going to be people either bringing in a Bournemouth player and maybe benching them. Maybe they are going to be considering whether to play or bench their Nottingham Forest defenders. So a word on that. How do you see that one going?
Oh God, tough, innit? I just see it being a bit of a fight, really.
Yeah.
Bit of a scrap. Both very, very good teams. Maybe I'm a bit sort of unknowingly biased towards Forest at the moment. I've always got a good feeling about Forest, so I think Forest will cause Bournemouth problems. The thing about Forest is they're a very unusual team. They're a unique team. They're not really doing things in the same way as everyone else this season. So I'm not sure how easy they are to prepare for, really, especially if you're a team who typically, like Bournemouth, really presses from the front. Forest probably happy to sort of, not have as much of the ball and be a bit deeper. And, not only are they a team that are sort of unique, really, in many ways, but they also just know exactly what they're doing. So you have to always feel good about Forest when a team's in such a good place mentally, and the manager and everything's fit perfectly together, and everybody knows exactly what they're doing. It takes something incredible to stop that, and even Liverpool, they were the better team, Liverpool, in the end, but obviously they drew the game. Talking about Liverpool, a team that haven't had to try to beat anyone, and they've lost and drawn against Forest. So I think it'll be a bit of a scrap. Bournemouth are a very good team. I think both teams will score. Because calling which way it'll go is difficult. And I think if I was forced, I'd go 2-1 Forest.
Yeah, it's very difficult, isn't it? Because it's two teams who genuinely look very decent at the moment. It's a hard one to call. I'm definitely benching Forest defender. I don't really like that one.
Yeah.
Even for them, I really don't like it. And there are two good options this week. In fact, I might be benching Munoz anyway. So yeah, very difficult. But Wood, unless you've got a ridiculous team, I really can't see how you would do it. There are some people benching, playing Rodgers ahead of Wood. I can't see that myself. I know I was a bit too positive on West Ham last week and got punished for it, and quite rightly too. We only have had 3 or 4 shots on target in 2 games under Potter. He's trying to be a bit more pragmatic, but I really don't blame him. He's got a problem with the squad, lots of injuries and that sort of thing. So nevertheless, I would still play Wood over Rodgers. And same thing with now Pedro. I really don't get it personally. I know Rodgers is great and all that, but yeah,
it's a classic example, isn't it, of the influence of models these days. That's what it is. At the end of the day, some people maybe not sure, but Wood is like, what is he? I'm not saying that the decision is easy, by the way. It could go either way. There's one of the appealing things about playing Rodgers over Wood is that Rodgers will have much lower ownership this week, but Review has Rodgers ahead of Wood, and if you see anyone playing Rodgers over Wood, it's because they've looked at Review. It's simple as that, and that's not a dig. Maybe they're just not sure, and they're just relying on the model to make to sort of decide something they think is close and to go with the low EO. But when you think about it's just funny, isn't it? Because 5, 6, 7 years ago, someone like Wood, who's scoring every single week and is just coming off the back of whatever it is, 12, 8, 9, 12, and you're gonna bench him for an Aston Villa midfielder who's had a couple of decent hauls. It's funny, isn't it? Because it's just the influence these days of the models. But no, it's fine. I've no problem with it. But I personally am going to, it's Wood.
It's just some really good questions and points being fired in the chat tonight. So it's probably the most exciting chat that we've had since we've been doing this. We're actually finally streaming properly because my internet's all right now. But Joseph has just said he's playing Wood and Pedro over Bruno.
Who's Bruno
playing? Is it Fulham away? Oh yeah, that is tricky. Yeah, that is tricky. How do you bench? Bruno feels like one of those players I really, really hate the idea of benching him almost ever. But I can see the problem there, Joseph. You've got 2 better fixtures.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I will say about United, there's been a big thing this week. It's been quite prominent in the press conferences with Amorim and so on, is that he really feels, and often I don't really read into these things too much, but you do really see it with the players, and you can understand it why. But he thinks that they're much more nervous at home at the moment with the crowd and the way it's been for so long for United. And he's just saying that you can see it every time they're on the ball, they look nervous and they look indecisive at home, and we can't seem to score. And he's saying all this, and he says every time we concede first, it makes it much worse. And the most important thing for us now, the only thing we can do is we have to score first. He says it's really difficult at home, and the players seem to feel a bit more free away from home. So obviously, as someone who owns Bruno myself this week, Fulham away is a very difficult fixture. United are not playing very well, but I low key feel a little bit better about us going away from home at the moment.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. I'm going to try and be a bit more ruthless about the rest of the fixtures here and just be very selective, because I think some of them it's weird, isn't it? Even a fixture like Spurs Leicester has become irrelevant for a lot of FPL managers at the moment, which seems a bit bizarre. But I'm just going to be quite selective here and ask you a couple of questions. So, Southampton Newcastle, is that a captain option?
Southampton Newcastle, is he a captain option? He's not a captain option because we've got Mo Salah, but he's my vice at the moment.
Same, yeah.
His run is finally over, isn't it? Or his chance of beating the record is done. It's beating Vardy's record.
Yeah, no, you can't beat Vardy. Yeah, none of that. That was an exciting time. I remember that run really well. How many games was it? Is it 11, 14, or something around that?
It was 11, I think, for Vardy, and Isak was on 8. And he was obviously, I mean, we know he would have been desperate for it. But when he took that free kick, I couldn't believe he took that free kick at the end of the game. I couldn't believe they let him. I don't know if you saw that, but right at the end of the game, they were losing to when they were. I think they were only. I don't know what the score was. It was like 1 or 2-1, or the game was close against Bournemouth, and they had a really good free kick. I was glad that Gordon didn't take it. As a Gordon owner, I was thinking, oh God. But then I remembered that Trippier was on the pitch, and I was thinking that's perfect for Trippier. And Isak insisted on taking it just because to get a chance of getting his record. So he was.
I think we just need to take a moment to enjoy the Gordon blank as well. Finally.
Yeah, can we just have like 3 seconds silence?
I've got nothing in here.
Yes.
Sorry if you own him, but it's just me and Danny have suffered badly at the hands of Gordon, who is a good pick. No beef or whatever, but
no, good pick. Very good.
Just didn't get round to it, basically. Yeah, okay. And I suppose the other one that's really interesting to me anyway is Palace Brentford. I know we've talked about it a bit, but now we've both got a bit of a decision this week. I'm going to guess that we're both considering whether to play Munoz or not. So that's a problem. And then you've got Eze or Sarr to Mbeumo, or wait and just bank the week of information / it's not that conclusive, so don't do anything and so on. What are your thoughts on that one? I find this to be this match is essentially the only reason why I'm struggling for a decision this week.
Yeah, massively. I mean, yeah, first of all, I need to choose between Hall and Munoz, basically, which is pretty tough in itself. Very close. The biggest one for me, which to be honest, I've been so kind of caught up trying to think about the double and who to get and whatnot, that it sounds silly, and I'm probably not going to do it. Okay, but obviously I've got Eze, who's at home to Brentford, and he's the models support him slightly more. I'm not going to make the move. It would be suboptimal. I'm probably not going to make the move, but I sort of disregard the models. I don't, Bryan Burmo is. I mean, I've owned Eze now for a good while. I got him early. I've had him for, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 weeks. Got in the first week I had him, he got that 1 point and came off in 59 minutes. And then he's been okay. He's got the points, but I've watched him every game, and I've not been convinced. Obviously, he's a very good footballer. He's always good on the ball, but I've just not been convinced in terms of from an FPL perspective at all by Eze. He doesn't seem to have that extra bit in his step. He doesn't seem to have that confidence. Mateta does. Sarr, I'm just not convinced by Eze. And I think that Burmo is just so far and away a better FPL asset. It's a joke. They're not close. So it's almost frustrating that models, for example, have Eze ahead, and probably even maybe odds. I need to look at the odds in terms of the goal score odds, but they're not close. And I hate if I have to watch this back and I didn't make the swap, and Bournemouth gets a brace again and Eze blanks, I'll be so angry. So in other words, long story short, obviously I'm making that move next week. So obviously I could make the move this week, but I'm probably not going to. And the main appeal as well, though, is that I've got a player who is projected to be a better player than Bournemouth this week, but also is very low ownership. So I don't want to sell someone who's like 7% effective ownership for someone who's 60% owned.
Is he?
Well, he's definitely 40%. He's huge ownership. His effective ownership is huge.
Oh, okay.
In terms of engaged managers.
Oh yeah, I'm not going to be able to find that. Yeah, that's no. Okay, no, I understand. I think that's fair enough.
What do you think on it? First of all, what do you think on that game and those players? And I know you're different, so don't just come at me with just the Sarr perspective, because I think Sarr is different, a little bit different.
Do you? Okay.
I think it's a little bit different. Sarr isn't quite as good as Eze, I would think. That's what I would say. As much as I've just said I've not felt great about Eze, I think he's still...
Well, the handy thing, right, is that Sarr was sold by a fair few people, so he's not quite as threatening, you might say. And of course we don't exactly know the situation, so he came off, didn't he? 60 odd minutes, so there is still a little bit of that going on. Perhaps he's not as central or to everything that Palace do, right? I mean, you struggle to argue that. He's obviously done pretty well, and he looks a bit more creative than he used to. But yeah, it's a tricky one. I'm just going to very quickly say as well, we've got lots of questions in the chat. We will get round to them, but we'll probably stash them to the end unless they fit in with what we're saying. There's one Palace related one, so I'll dig that out now, which is Bruno/Pedro. I'm going to assume that's and Bruno and Pedro to Eze and Mateta.
I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, I don't think so.
No.
Not good. I don't know whether it's quite the right time to do that anyway, depending on your strategy going forward. But I think, I mean, if you got the cash and lots of transfers, Pedro to Mateta is probably a more acceptable one. But yeah, I don't know.
The other thing I want to say quickly about Eze, we still have no clue, and I think we have less clue than anyone realizes about penalties. Now, I know Mateta's taken the last one, and it was a crap penalty, and I know he's taken one with Eze on the pitch. But it's funny, when you listen to like the FML guys, Alon and Walsh, and obviously Walsh is a Palace fan, they just talk as if it's just known to them that Eze is on penalties. They're just like, oh, they were, they're like, I can't believe Eze went off just before they won that penalty. What a shame. Hopefully he gets another one. And Walsh is just sort of like, yeah, Eze is on penalties. So I'm not sure that's the case, and I certainly wouldn't say that, he definitely is. But I think the likelihood of Eze being on penalties is probably a lot higher than we realise, really, because he's very good at penalties. I think he's taken 8 and scored 7, but I'd say very good, but he's good enough. And we've just seen from Mateta's penalty, Mateta's not actually very good at taking it. The problem with Mateta is he wants them. He's a big bastard.
Yeah,
he just takes the ball and he's like, let me have it. Whereas Eze is a bit more chilled. Eze is like Odegaard. He's just like, yeah, whatever, you have it if you want. But yeah, so that's the other thing thinking about that move, is that Eze could easily take the next pen.
Yeah, I think in your position, I'd be much more tempted to hold off than I am in mine. To tell you the truth, yeah, I think it is much more difficult.
Don't you dare!
Just for the entertainment value, actually.
If you even think about going to Bryan before I get him back, we're not podding next week.
That's not true. Come on. CM Punk in the chat, just to save me, CM Punk says we need to be mindful of Palace's new signing, Romain Esse. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I had to Google that CM Punk. I didn't actually know who that was because I'm not very professional. But he's 19 and he was playing for Millwall. Now, I'm going to assume that he's not going to get into the first team that quickly.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about
that. That's just a guess from me. But yeah, that's but thank you for raising it. I didn't know. I genuinely have never heard of him. But he is Millwall and all that. So I suppose that maybe it's in my blood to forget about them.
The thing with Eze is sorry, Rich, just the last thing, but on that point, the thing with Eze is the main man, and he will be the main man until he's there. And he's the best player, and no one's really going to take minutes off him. Yeah, if someone's available, it might help a little bit. But basically, Eze is going to come off when the manager wants to rest him or feels like he needs to preserve him. He's not going to come off because he wants to give someone else some minutes, just generally. So Sarr might be at risk, but Eze is not going to be at risk really from anyone.
Yeah. Oh, thanks to James in the chat who talks about Eze. This is going to be a nightmare, isn't it? Eze is great for Millwall. Might be a few minutes here and there, but similar position to Eze. Yeah. So I don't think seems pretty unlikely that we will be too affected by that. I'm going to move on because otherwise we could get stuck here, and we're already at an hour quarter.
Yeah.
I'm just going to have a very quick look at these fixtures, and then we'll get into our teams, Danny. So what we thought we'd do is bring up this cut from, I think it's from Fancy Scout anyway, this particular cut. So thank you to them. I didn't actually ask, but thank you anyway. These are the relevant fixtures for big teams going forward. When I say big teams, I mean players that you might have some of. I suppose Newcastle may be the one that I would like to have added on there, to be honest. I'm just thinking about that. But yeah, this is quite important. So obviously the obvious point there, Liverpool, good run starts now as if there wasn't already a good run because they're always good. Fulham, still reasonably robust fixtures. I would say it's probably harder for Robinson owners than Jimenez owners in terms of what to do. I know that as a Jimenez owner, I'm reasonably okay with potentially losing him. Playing him again is going to be a bit of a decision this week, Dennis, so get ready for that one. And then Palace, again, pretty decent for the most part. So Eze owners, why would you possibly consider selling him? And yeah, I think they have those nice fixtures after 29 as well, which makes life a bit tricky. And then you've got Forest with a slightly troublesome patch, particularly for people like me with Forest defenders and that sort of thing, and Bournemouth as well. Was there any particular notes you had on that, Danny, or was that more just an information giving slide?
This slide. Just the slide in general.
No, just in case there's anything that you might want to add that I haven't touched on.
I think it's just like I don't know. I think it's really useful because it's thinking about what kind of rotations look like in terms of who we can. I think for me, it's most useful. It's really thinking about who we can sell in 24 for the double, or who you want to keep and what that looks like. And I think it's really tricky because, it's a lot of us. It's especially with that Everton defender. I mean. And how maybe, for example, an Everton defender rotates with whoever else you might have still, whether it's Robinson or Munoz there or a Forest defender, maybe even Bournemouth.
Do you think you would play your Everton defender for any of the fixtures other than 24?
Well, good question, but again, it depends who you've got with them. So you probably not in 25. You shouldn't really need to. Palace away. The other thing is I don't really know yet what to make of Everton defence. I think. It just won't be probably quite as good as they were under Dyche, but they'll also have more attacking threat. And I also think, the team's just kind of rejuvenated. I think they're going to think Everton, if I was just making a random prediction off very little evidence, I think they're going to be better and kind of decent and kind of organised and happy. So that leads to good things happening. I mean, United at home is one of those horrible ones as a United fan. It's like, But we can be so bad that it wouldn't be a disaster if you had to play an Everton defender at home to United, because you just never know what United are going to turn up. Okay. And Moyes will be well up for that one as well, won't he? But certainly I would have no problem playing them in 28 and 29, especially with Wolves away. We could well be at a point there where Cunha isn't at Wolves anymore by then.
I think the thing that interested me when I looked at this from an Everton perspective, I was thinking to myself, if you are taking a punt on Calvert-Lewin, and of course it's not for everybody. The more I looked at them, I was like, they're not that bad, are they? They really don't look that bad. I know that we've all been burnt from the past, and you probably don't want to play him every week until you lose him. But
they are also
so bad. Like I mentioned United at home, I don't mind that too much. Brentford away seems fine. Wolves away is fine. West Ham, probably Palace away is the worst one, if anything.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's just worth noting slightly, because again, I was looking ahead because you mentioned I think people need to think about the option of holding on to the wild card potentially after 29, as you sort of mentioned. And
Yeah.
Everton's fixture. I know it's not on the screen, but Everton's fixtures are terrible after 29, and Fulham's fixtures are terrible after 29. Like, you wouldn't want to play them any week at all. So it's also worth just keeping that in mind. But
so keeping both would be problematic, really.
Yeah, or double Everton defence, or keeping both would be problematic. And then, but then at the same time, they do play in 29, whereas the Palace and Newcastle don't. You know,
But you'd have to be off your face to get to outfield Everton defenders, wouldn't you? We can come to that. No, but the other reason why I found this to be quite interesting is that there's lots of permutations. I mean, I was thinking, for example, let's say for the sake of argument that you bought in Dominic Calvert-Lewin for 24. In my position, there's just about enough money to move Enzo up to, say, a Bournemouth or Ahmad.
Same.
And then you get that lovely sort of Southampton game, for example, and you can bench it Calvert-Lewin for a week or something like that. It begins to become a little bit more appealing from that point of view. But the other thing was the defenders. So I'm having a nightmare choosing if I... Okay, so I'm going to be honest. The reason for Mykolenko, if I do go there, is it enables this Enzo upgrade cash. And who to lose out of Hall, Milenkovic or Munoz or Gabriel, if you want to go down that line, is... It's a very tricky decision, actually. I'm finding this to be one of those awkward... Thank God I don't have to make it this week. One of the reasons I'm considering Milenkovic is simply that other than 24, I don't really like any of the games until 29. And would I possibly bring him back in for someone in 29? Maybe. So it's one of those kind of tricky decisions to make, but... don't love it, but losing Hall again, you lose lots of value. Losing Munoz, you lose the good fixtures. So it's it's really, really tricky.
I'm just looking at Hall now. We obviously haven't got Newcastle on the screen, but it is so tough. And I got Hall at 4.3, by the way, which I don't think many people did.
You'd lose a good 0.4, then.
Yeah, exactly. So 4.3, and he's got 5.1 now. But I actually hadn't ever clicked on him and looked at the points that he's got in the last few games. Maybe we shouldn't get too blinded by that Bournemouth result, because obviously sometimes it happens. A team just perfectly annihilates another team. But Hall's gone 15, 7, 6, 12, 2, 6, 4. It's been incredible, really. But his a bit like what you just said with Milenkovic. You might just have to swallow losing that value, basically. But again, it depends, because a lot of them have got bad fixtures. But Hall has got Southampton this week, which is fine. But then after the double, he's got City, Forest, Liverpool. Then he's got West Ham away, and then he probably blanks in 29. Now, obviously, that's terrible. But then you can think about whether you want him after that. And I guess this is where we've got to try to start thinking about wildcard strategies, because he's got decent fixture in 30. Well, he's got Brentford at home. It's okay. He's got 30 and 31. And then he has got a couple of standout home fixtures. I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but it's just worth noting that you mentioned a couple of standout fixtures, but actually one of them is in 34, where a lot of people might be free hitting, and I'm likely to free hit. So he's got Ipswich home in 34. So maybe we don't need to hang on to him. I don't know. So anyway, that's the impossible one at the moment that I haven't got my head around. I haven't decided, and even I think I've looked at review, and even reviews getting bamboozled, and 1 minute says Munoz, the next minute says Robinson, then it says Hall, and it's like a 0.1 in it over like 10 weeks, and it can't decide what to do in terms of the rotations and stuff.
I think Munoz, by the way, is definitely... I know that people have talked about some decent-ish fixtures after 29. I know they got Southampton as an isolated one, but I'm fine with selling him in 29. I don't really have any issue there whatsoever. It's this next run. It's very difficult for the brain to not want to keep Everton at home and Ipswich at home and those kind of games, as opposed to, as you said, Man City, Liverpool. It's very hard to do the mental gymnastics.
No, absolutely. But then loads of people have got Robinson. He's probably the highest owned of all of them, and generally Fulham defence.
Those fixtures are all right, aren't they? Yeah,
exactly. And he's the one when you look at the plans going ahead. Yeah, you can do a few rotations, but you still end up with things like Munoz, at home to Villa, which isn't fantastic from memory, or you end up with just a couple of little sort of sticky fixtures as your third defender. You don't really want to have to make that choice. Whereas Robinson's got, as you say, in 26, he's got Palace at home, then he's got Wolves away, it's just a little bit more palatable. And then he does play in 29, but it's Spurs at home. So he's
But,
sort of like you've got the middle ground man with Robinson. You've got all the value and Hall and a good, I guess Newcastle, great team. And then you got Munoz with a couple of standout fixtures who's got all about the XG. So.
And let's not forget about Forest. I mean, so I know you're not in this position because for whatever reason, maybe you were high or something and you decided not to get one. But so Bournemouth not great this week. Brighton is probably the one I don't mind. And then you've got Fulham away, Newcastle away, Arsenal at home, City at home, and of course then it's okay after that. But yeah, one of these guys will probably need to make way. So it's a tricky one. I mean, look, in a way, logically, Hall is the easiest one, but then you definitely lose 0.4 and so on. So because we're in a privileged position, aren't we? We've actually got a stacked defensive set, so we don't have a Greaves. Neither of us do. I think I went quite early in taking out Greaves for Hall quite a while ago. So yeah, even more difficult for us. We should get onto our teams anyway, and then we'll do a few questions before we go. I'm keen to keep it down a bit, but I've failed again.
Race. Yeah.
Your team, you got a couple of minutes. Am I going to upload this to Spotify? Maybe I am. Okay. Spoiler: Alisson, Hall, Gabriel, Trent, Eze, Salah captain, Bruno, Palmer. I've seen him on some benches this week. Yeah, I know. And Sales as well. Wood, João Pedro, Isak, and then on the bench, Fabianski, Munoz, Robinson, Enzo. So another good bench week for you. So you've done a move, and that's possibly it.
Yeah, and again, obviously it's kind of suboptimal move. I've done the move because you just got to make that decision. I was very, very tight with future moves. If you mentioned it before, but you're kind of looking ahead at potentially being open to Bournemouth midfielders. If I get the people, some of the people I want for the double, and I would have had no room to move, kind of 0.1 at best. And obviously Alisson was rising, so it was I just thought I'll just go early on it. And it was really hard because I made the move at like 1:29 in the morning. You're thinking, this is not me. I don't like making a move this early when I've got so much to think about. So I'm tied to it now. It's triple Liverpool, but I'm okay with it. It feels pretty solid. I'm scared of Gakpo, is what it is. So that's not really changing. My decision is just Munoz versus Hall, who to start this week, and it's pretty tight because Southampton have looked pretty tidy, haven't they? Southampton. Well, I know they're getting beaten, but they look like they can play and they look like they can create a chance and sort of, good on the ball. And then obviously Newcastle have just been battered and Hall was terrible in that game.
Oh yeah, I suppose it was, yeah.
Obviously I think he'll play, but what do you think?
I haven't considered benching Hall for a second, to be honest with you. It's interesting you considered it. It's just that because of the way that Brentford are, I've just always assumed that they are going to score. But equally, Munoz on the small pitch at home, he always looks that a bit more threatening, doesn't he? So I might end up playing both, but in your position, I'm least likely to bench Hall personally. Yeah. But it is a hard one, I think. And of course, it might depend somewhat on whether you decide to push the button on Eze early, because if you have Bryan, maybe that'll wobble your thinking a little bit.
I don't think I will, but yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. You've got a solid bulletproof mind, whereas I'm emotive and romantic and challenged.
Says this Elite 1K manager. Go on.
Elite 1K. That's just simply not true. Joseph in the chat says Munoz has a better points on hub, 4.6 versus Hall 3.7, but clean sheet wise Hall is better. So if that interests you, Danny.
What was that? Sorry. What was that? Sorry. Go on. That's fine.
Okay. Munoz has better points on hub, 4.6, Hall 3.7, but the clean sheet is Hall's at the moment.
Okay. I think review has Hall slightly ahead, but it's very tight.
Oh God! Someone in the chat has said, "Why not Bruno to Mbuemo instead of Eze?"
Absolutely not.
You're wasting your time, CM Punk. It's not going to happen, I'm afraid. Even though I'm sure it's a very good idea. Yeah. I'm gonna. I'll come back to some of these other questions in a minute, but this is in no way, shape, or form. Again, have I actually thought that much about the starting element here? But this is the team. Again, the problem is, some of you have probably guessed by now that Danny and I do tend to talk outside of the pod a bit as well. So I'm the Allison kind of manager when you think about it. You know, I think that move is sexy. So
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
just going to stop you there. I don't care.
Good.
So he's in. He was surprised. We talk about him another time, but Allison's always he's an interesting character to me because I look at him and think, oh, he's sort of he's a sort of model like man, sort of Greek god looking guy, and then you look at any videos and read about him, and he's very, very, very religious, isn't he? I mean, we don't need to talk about this particularly, but
Yeah.
that's his thing. He's always posting about that, so that's quite. I don't know why, it just changes my perception of him somewhat. But that's a big part of who he is. Anyway, so I'll read it out. Becker, at the moment, it looks like 4 at the back there, but that can easily change. So Munoz, Trent, Gabriel, Hall, and then Palmer, Salah, captain, Bruno, Sarr, and then Wood, Isak, and then on bench, Fabianski, Raul, Jimenez, Milenkovic, and Enzo. So, as you can imagine, already there's quite a big decision about who to bench. That's just there because I was playing 4 at the back last week, so I wouldn't read too much into that. But Raul Jimenez is an awkward one because, again, the fixture, I think, if I was being honest and thinking about, penalties and the rest of it, I think Raul is probably a smidgen over some of those players. The reason why Sarr is in there is because he might not be Sarr anymore. So that's one of the things that I've got to think through. Some big decisions going forward. So, like, one of them, for example, I saw someone in the chat talk about Mikalenko and, like, is there any point because you're only playing him 24? Just on that, that's whether I bring him in 24 is sort of irrelevant in the sense that it will either be him in 24 or it will be Hodgson in 25 to save the money, because I really don't. I'm worried that Enzo will just turn into a money pit, to be honest with you. I know it's not the most important thing in the world, but that's something I'd like to rectify at some point. Anyway, long-winded. What do you think, Danny? I mean, first of all, is there a transfer in the offing? I've got 2.1 in the bank. I'm sort of 90% likely to do Sartu and Buemo one way or another in the next 2 weeks. It's whether it's worth it now. And of course, that probably doesn't really change the starters other than it just locks in the 4 midfield.
Yeah, how many free transfers have you got again?
Oh, maybe 2. Not many, but
it's significant though, isn't it? Because if you had a lot, then you could be more open to the Sarr to Burma move. But with it being a double game week, it is harder for you to go early on that move, I would say. Because you don't, you, as much as we want Burma, I'm going to get him. You wouldn't get him over some of the good double game week players, would you? So I don't know. You're going to want some flexibility.
I'm not sure. Well, to be honest on that, unless Trent got injured or Salah got injured or something like this, I'm not sure it makes a huge difference, because the only moves I'm going to do in double game week 24 would be downgrades. They would be Raul to Calvert-Lewin or one of the defenders.
Well, anyone in your team could get injured, couldn't they? I'm just saying, like, in terms of having to replace them, maybe.
That's true. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's tight. I don't really know what to make of Sarr, because I haven't watched. I felt like he's sort of been dropping a bit deeper, but I still think his minutes are good. I still think he's been playing very well, and he could do anything. I still think he could do anything. He still looks sharper than Eze to me. I think Eze, obviously, like I said, he's a better player and he's the main man, but Sarr still looks a bit sharper. I should say as well, CM Punk asked me what my team value is. I've got 1.4 in the bank as well. I think the team value is high.
It's still better than mine. Yeah.
Despite having Enzo, who's been one of the truly standout sort of bad decisions I've made this season. Not because he's a terrible player, but anyway, that's another story. But
and of course Jimenez as well. So there's a few things. They're not sort of shattering earth-shattering decisions this week, but
I would find
Jimenez is an awkward thing.
it.
90, sorry, Sarr, I believe, is a kind of 85-minute type player at the moment, whereas Jimenez is more like a 70, and that is a little bit of an issue. I know lots of people wouldn't sell him going forward, by the way, and I can see a few in the chat who are not keen on the idea. But Mbeumo is just leagues above Sarr in the long run, so it's going to happen. It's just a case of when.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I would find it very hard to bench Jimenez.
Yeah, I know.
And just to be ruthless, I wouldn't bench him. I'm just trying to. That's my gut reaction. I wouldn't bench him. It's just that it's hard. I would play him over one of your two defenders if it were me. I think.
Yeah. I think from memory, I think actually no, the algorithms and that sort of thing don't necessarily agree on this sort of thing. They're a little bit in conflict with each other, but on the whole, that's probably the case. I think Munoz would probably come out bottom on most of them. But as you know, that's a risk in itself. So yeah, so it's just going to be anyway the Sarr versus Bryan thing. But at the moment, I don't know. I do think it's a little harder for me than you in this scenario because I think Eze, I don't know. As you say, his ownership's a factor and the rest of it. So anyway, something to think on. But yeah, there might be a few tweaks there. Actually, I don't have any other slides thinking about it, so I'll take that off the stage. Just going to rack through a couple of quick questions for you, Danny, and then we'll leave everyone to their evenings and cups of whatever before traitors, etc. Some of these questions are from early in the stream, so we'll try and whip through them and be quite ruthless. So FPL MFZ, if you don't plan to free hit 29, do you take Salah out? Wildcard 30.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one for everyone. I will be trying to avoid that really, just because there is a lot of value in it. But it's not just about the value; it's also about extra transfers because you want him straight back, and transfers count for a lot. So trying to short answer is I'll be doing everything I can to not do that. It's a bit easier with Trent because there's less value, but it's not just about the value; it's about the transfers. It's like it's also who's on offer, and I know Foden's playing well at the moment, but it's like, I wouldn't be doing it for a Man City midfielder, something like that. You know, you can get Bruno another way. I don't think there's enough on offer to make that switch, and you can captain someone good anyway. So,
yeah, I think you probably stand to lose a good $500,000. You want him back on wildcard 30 anyway. I don't think there's a lot of brilliant midfielders on offer that week anyway. MF said, so I'd probably avoid it. Colm, 4 free transfers. It looks like Guardiola to Trent and Raul to Gakpo and the failed Jota experiment to Rodgers to facilitate the other two not going near Everton. Sorry, I thought there was going to be a question there. There isn't. That's my fault. Richie, what's your opinion on West Ham goalies? Do you reckon Flappy keeps his place in the long run? It's his place to lose. And at the moment, I don't know. Areola, the attitude, I don't know whether he has an attitude thing. I would, if I was a betting man, I would say Fabianski will keep his place until we cease to need to think about it, which is presumably the next wild card. So yeah, should be fine. But neither of them are brilliant, as you know. I mean, as brilliant as Fabianski's been one of the best signings West Ham have made in the Premier League era. By the way, I'm a huge fan of it. I mean, we're talking about a while ago now, but obviously now he's not as sharp as he used to be. Areola's just not quite been as good as what we saw at, say, Fulham. I think he had one great year at Fulham, didn't he? But he's never really cemented his place at West Ham. Alex, I need 0.7 to get Pedro to Gakpo. Do you prefer Timber to Castagna or Martinelli to Kluivert?
Kluivert all day.
I'd probably just check the return dates. I know, actually, Timber's all right for minutes now, isn't he? Because Saliba's out for a while as well. Well, I don't know how long, but yeah, I'd margin. Oh, Martinelli's got. Yeah, I'd probably still lean on the Martinelli one. think we've dealt with that. And that were questions about Mikalenko. Yeah, Mikalenko. Can't speak now. There are a few questions on Blue Sky. I don't know if you've got them handy, Danny, but if not, I will try and find them.
Yeah, is it underneath the post? I've got it here.
Yep. Here we are from our good friend Stu Pep Talk, who small chance he might be with us in the next week or two. Has Cliver overtaken Semenyo as the key player from Bournemouth?
We discussed that already, haven't we? Not quite, but he's on the path towards doing that. If he gets the minutes, then yeah.
Do you want the financial fair play question?
Absolutely not.
No, Pep. We'll talk about it off pod because we don't know what to say. And FPL Doggy. I'm not going to make any jokes. I'll save that. What to do with Luis Diaz? Keep him for the next 3 weeks, or do him to Rodgers to enable Fraser to Gakpo? I don't even know who Fraser is. I'm assuming that's a Duff striker.
Yeah, God, don't know. I've seen Fraser's name since the Fraser Wilson days. Well, I'm confused now. Yeah, that's tough with Diaz. Diaz owners is tough, isn't it? Because you really don't know what's going to happen. I mean, because obviously Darwin is a significant threat to him now.
I would probably roll the dice on that one and just leave it. Purely because transfers are so precious at the moment, and you never know. There's not going to be a huge gap. I mean, Diaz versus Gakpo minutes. What are we talking? Maybe 10 minutes a game. Is it worth 2 transfers? Probably not. One last one in the chat. What are your current plans for bench boost and Assman? I'm going to guess. That's a very good question. Bench. To be honest with you, I wasn't that far away CM Punk from last week, but I'm glad I didn't in the end for various reasons. So yeah, bench boost probably. I mean, from what I hear, and I don't really know until everything's ironed out, I would say it's more than likely to be something like 33, but I really don't know for certain. Yeah, there are people cleverer than us who have worked out all the permutations. I will just wait and listen and make plans after that. Assman, it will basically be the other one. You know, one of them will hit one set of doubles, one will hit the other. How about you, Denny?
Yeah, similar. I've not. I don't. I think we've got plenty of time to plan, to be sure, on that sort of thing. You know, we've got time and information will come. So, but I like the idea at the moment of Assman. I loosely like the idea of it in 36, 37, 38. And yeah, so what does this, and potentially, yeah, I'll bench boost in possibly 33 if that's the double. But
yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I might try and clip that as well. If I can try and cut the bit where you said I like the idea of ass.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm going to get back on here. YouTube Shorts. That will be on 1 million views within a few hours. Danny saying,
Not a lie.
Ass. You can't lie, indeed. There we go. I feel like that could be the title of the pod. No, I don't know. I haven't got a good snappy one tonight, so you might have to come up with something.
Been done to death. Been done to death.
Yeah. Thanks anyway for lots of good questions in the chat this evening. So we've enjoyed that, and we've enjoyed your company. And there'll always be a warm fire and a glass of brandy by it for any of you that join us on these long, cold winter evenings. Good. I think we're done, Danny. I hope you enjoy your evening. We're going to try and refrain from talking about traitors so that people just enjoy it for the last few days. And all I will say is there's something I read something about seers. So if anyone wants to look up this idea that they're giving someone seeing powers this evening, that's my little tip. You should be able to find out just by watching, whether that's absolute hokey and it's just something I've just read on the corner of the internet. But I know there's a twist incoming. That's all I will say. Good. Okay. Well, I will think a little bit more about Mr. Jimenez and so on, and leave you to worry about Bryan getting a brace.
Yeah. Cheers. Thanks. See you in a month or so.
Brilliant. Okay. Good evening all, and we'll see you again next week.